If you were like me earlier this year, not having read a full book for your own personal enjoyment in years and consequently feeling stupid and a little bit ashamed of yourself because of it, then hopefully this video will help you out. We all know that books are one of the most important creations of mankind. They convey knowledge, fact, ideology, power, philosophy. Every major movement in world history has been driven by, or at the very least helped and pushed forward by a book, whether that be the Bible, the Communist Manifesto, Uncle Tom's Cabin, whatever it may be. With such rich and informative objects just being available at our disposal, it seems negligible that we don't use them as often as we could. Every day, there's a larger abundance of fruitful knowledge available for all of us to utilize to become more informed, intelligent people. But it seems like we don't use them at all because we don't. As time goes on, research shows us that people are reading less and less, and that people aren't buying books as much. That's why you have libraries closing down, and people just aren't reading like they used to. Now, I'm not gonna be a boomer about this, alright? I'm not gonna say that video games are the bane of all evil. I'm not gonna say that you need to completely stop on TikTok and Instagram and all of that stuff, because that's ridiculous. They're parts of your life, and you enjoy them. I think it's fine to have. But I think it's fair to say that it feels a little disappointing that we have so much knowledge, more and more every single day, at our disposal, and that we just aren't using it. A few months ago, when I sat down and tried to read a book, I'd get bored in like 12 minutes and just start scrolling through TikTok. Not my proudest moments. Now, however, I can read and enjoy reading for hours on end, and this year, I've read 12 books in about 6 months. Now, the reason that I'm sharing that number is because it feels realistic. I'm not some literary guru. I'm not going to teach you how to read 100 books in a year. I'm not going to teach you how to do a book a week. But I feel like 2 books a month, a book every 2 weeks, I feel like that's good and that's fair. And at that rate, you're reading 24 books a year for 10 years, 240 books. You multiply that, you'll have read over 1,000 books. And I don't think that's anything to scoff at. This abundance of information that's available to us at all times. So I've broken this down into 5 main tips of what to do to get back into reading, or to get into reading for the first time, or to simply read more. Tip number 1, what should I read? So answering this requires you to know what kind of books you like. Now, if you've read before, then great. If not, I would just defer to whatever genres of other media you're enjoying, whether that be romance, horror, nonfiction, documentaries. So take that and translate it into something that you're interested in book form. Now, the reason this is super important is because if you read something that you're not interested in, then you're going to put it away. And not only is that going to detract from your overall experience with that book and waste your time, but that's also going to translate over to the other books that you read, or rather will probably not read in the future because of that negative experience. I know it's tempting to start out by reading something lengthy and dense and information filled, but I think it's a lot better to start with something simple. Also, I recommend starting with something that is about 175 pages or less. The reason for this is because short books are much easier to read, and because of that fact, you'll be able to finish it more easily, and you're more likely to commit to it. And overall, you're more likely to enjoy it and feel more relaxed because you're not scared of, oh my god, I'm only 100 pages in, I have 700 more pages, or whatever. So, for example, a good example of a book that had some interest to me was less than 175 pages, and also, importantly, wasn't too dense or difficult to read, is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. This is a great book. It's beautifully written, it's an interesting story, it's fiction, it mentioned philosophy and religion, which both interest me a lot, and it's a short book, just maybe 125 pages, it's easy on the mind, it's easy on the arm, and overall I liked it a lot. So I think that that's a really solid start. Now, on the flip side, you have a book like, say, the Senate Intelligence Committee Report on Torture. Now, that's a book that I really have. I own this book. This book is so dense. Oh my god, it is so hard to read. It's like 800 pages long. It's crazy, alright? Half of it is like blacked out documents and such, right? Because it's like a bunch of CIA and Fed stuff. This is hard to read. This took me forever. Not a fun thing to read. That said, it was rewarding, which we'll get to later on. But this is not a good book to start with. This is dense, it's too long, you're gonna feel discouraged, and you're probably gonna quit. I would continue to do this for the first 3 to 5 books you read. Tip number 2, how much should you read and what can you read? So how much you can read and what you should be reading every day is really entirely subjective. There's no number here. I like to read just until I get to a next chapter or a next big rounded page number. For example, I'm gonna read till I get to page 25, 50, 75, 100, 150, 200, whatever it is. And that helps me because I feel a little bit more complete and I can round out my numbers. Some people like to read by minutes. I recommend 15 to 20 minutes a day and then adding more as you go on. I think that's great. Of course, this is up to you, but again, what I found worked best for me would be to read in page intervals or chapter intervals. So I read 1 chapter per day or maybe 25 pages per day. That sounds like a lot, but again, once you get into it, it can become pretty attainable pretty quickly. Tip number 3. So how to avoid procrastinating reading. The best tip I can give you is to just bring 1 book with you everywhere you go, and to make that book something that you are interested in and make that the only book that you're reading at that moment, because this will invest you in the plot and it'll make you captivated and you're more likely to finish it and to read it. And that's really, really, really important, because that's how you finish and read books and you understand them and you enjoy it. You don't do it because it's painful and miserable. You do it because you enjoy it. And if you can get really absorbed into a plot of a book, then I think that's something really good. So something that I did this with was 1984 by George Orwell. Great book, fantastically written, super captivating. I brought it everywhere. Inside, outside, reading out on my deck, to reading inside my room, to school, to every place I could go. I brought it. And anytime I had a few minutes, I would read it. And because of that, bringing that with me, I really read a lot more of it a lot faster. It's the same way that if you bring a water bottle with you everywhere, you're naturally gonna drink more because there are no obstacles in your way. So if you feel even the slightest inclination of thirst, or you just glance at it, you might as well. And because of that, you're going to drink more, or in this case, read more, because you have that constant accessibility without any obstacles in the way to prevent you. Utilize what you have and read when you can. Tip number 4. What happens if you dislike a book or you get really bored while you're reading it? So the simple answer here, stop reading it. That's a pretty easy one. That said, I'm one of the people who, when I start a book, I really like to finish it. I find it really hard to just stop books in the middle of the way through. And because of that, I think that I finish books sometimes that I'm not the most interested in. That's not the best way to go. I think that if you've given a book maybe 50 pages and you're miserable while reading it, I would stop while you're reading. And the reason for this is because if you keep reading, that could turn you off other books. You're reading slower, so you're gonna read less. And then on top of that, you're gonna take longer breaks because you want to avoid it. And you're gonna have this negative association with reading. And so because of that, overall, if you have a book, 50 pages in, you don't like it, drop it, find a new one. It's no big deal. It's better to read more books that you enjoy than less books that you hate because you have a mental grudge against somebody saying that you can't finish a book. Tip number 5, the final tip. How do you make time for reading? So this kind of goes hand in hand with the procrastination thing. And the very simplest thing I can say, aside from bringing your book everywhere, is check your phone. See how often you are spending time on a variety of social media apps. Cut down 5 minutes per app. That'll give you probably 25, 30 minutes, you know, across YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And just use that for reading. Another great place to read, the bathroom. Is it disgusting? Yeah. Should you probably not do it? Yeah. But you have like 5 to 7 minutes and you're not doing anything, that's great. Utilize that. Same thing for eating a lunch alone, you know? If you don't have anyone to talk to, read a book. And so all those things can really help you. Whenever you have time that you would be pulling out your phone and doom scrolling, maybe replace that with a book every now and then. It's not too bad. That said, I'm not saying to not get social media, like I said, because it's fucking awesome. Anyway, that concludes my 5 tips for reading more this year, how I read more, how you can hopefully read more too. Do leave a comment. I read all of them and I'll respond to if there's a question or anything. I hope this video helped you out a little bit with reading and your reading journey, so on and so forth. Please comment below with any perspectives, ideas, questions, comments, concerns, so on and so forth. But yeah, maybe comment your favorite book down below and I'll rate it. I'll read it and rate it. Why not? Thanks for watching. Subscribe, please. Goodbye.